kind of jump into the topic for today, which is about grade structure and grade structure design. So this is not something that's completely alien to you, but grade structure and grade structure design is a critical element post job evaluation in any organization. And I'm naturally assuming that all of your organization also have grade structure in one way or the other, right? So essentially, what is a grade structure? A grade structure is a sequence or hierarchy of grades or bands or levels in which similar jobs are comparable in size in groups. So when I say similar groups, similar jobs, obviously that kind of tells you that how do we kind of know the jobs are similar? We kind of know jobs similar using job evaluation scores. Sorry. Now, typically, jobs, grade structures are determined as an outcome of job evaluation exercise. And there are two aspects that kind of, define a grade structure. One is the number of grades in the structure. So that's one. And secondly, the width of the range, right? So there are two aspects. One is the number of grades, and second is the width of the grade structure, which basically, defines pay and pay progression. Obviously, we will cover that maybe in one of the other sessions on how do we design pay range as well as part of the rewards program. But even I think you guys will have a session on that. But just to give you a flavor, a grade structure is defined by the number of levels and obviously the width of pay range as well. Now, there are multiple elements as well, as you know, right, which is linked to grade structure. One is obviously, pay or compensation, right? There's obviously a range of pay that each, grade structure defines. Basically, there is a minimum, there's a midpoint, and there's a maximum. And the range basically serves as a guideline for organizations when you're hiring talent, when you're internally promoting talent, or when you're allocating merit increases. The other critical element is many a times benefits in many organizations are linked to certain grades, right? For example, an organization might say that beyond a certain level and above, you are entitled to a certain set of benefit. It can be vehicle allotment, it can be company house allotment. I mean, those are the ways and means in which grade structure is also used in administrating benefit. And finally, grade structure also has a very close linkage to, titles, right? So when organizations design a grade structure, they also create a title framework to kind of go along. Now, for example, if you actually look at the figure, right, that's being shown to you on the presentation, basically this basically talks about grade structure for three categories of jobs. One is support roles, and then you have broadly like a designation or a title linked with this, and then you have grade structure for a professional role, and then you have grade structure for a management role, right? So again, this is an indicative structure. We'll come to designing grade structure for based on job evaluation scores in the latter part of the presentation. But just to give an indication, and obviously you also would have seen in your respective organizations, similar kind of grade structure where you have a hierarchy of jobs and you also will have a certain title linked to a grade structure. So there are a few elements which make grade structure for every organization unique, right? One is, it has to be to a great extent aligned to what kind of an organization you are, what strategy you use, and how does it serve the needs of your employees. When we look at different kinds of grade structure in the next slide, I'll maybe double click a bit on that. And what grade structure already does is it also gives employees some amount of visibility to different kinds of different kind of career tracks, etc., which is there in your organization. And it also helps you to kind of communicate some amount of equity, fairness, consistency, etc., in managing pay as well. So broadly, I think in this slide, I just want to give you a flavor of what grade structure is, why grade structure is used, and what are some of the practical applications of having a grade structure, right? So maybe I'll cover the next slide as well, and I'll take a question to kind of discuss and different perspectives from the group as well. So naturally, when we talk about grade structures, one natural question that comes to everyone's mind is, What are the different kinds of grade structure that we have, and what are some of the considerations that we should have in designing grade structure, right? So as I was saying earlier as well, grade structure is a natural downstream activity after evaluating jobs, and grade structure typically consists of a bunch of series of grades, a hierarchy of bands or levels, right? Now, obviously, there is no hard and fast rule on how many grades an organization should have, right? But maybe in the next 2 to 3 minutes, maybe broadly, let's look at some of the principles on how grade structures typically evolve, right? So generally, we say that any organization which has, more than I would say 9 or 10 or more number of grades from the entry level low role to the top level roles are called narrow banded or narrow graded organization. And somewhere where the number of grades are say a 5, 6, they're broadly called as broadband kind of organizations. Now, the sequence of grades can cut across job families, or you can have unique grades, for different job families also. Now, where do you think, where do you think we will have a lot of grades? Typically in organizations, with very, I would say, largely bureaucratic organizations where there is a need for very close and rigid control is required, where I would say the jobs are defined very narrowly, where progression is faster. You don't have to acquire that much of skills to maybe move from one level to the other. In such kind of organizations, etc., you typically see more number of grades, like maybe in retail chains, like manufacturing organizations. In the yesteryear, even banks had a lot of very narrow kind of grade structure where these jobs used to be very narrowly designed, and people used to move faster from one grade to the other. But whereas in organizations which are typically delayed and where there's a lot of autonomy for people to do the jobs, and autonomy naturally comes with people having to, acquire a lot of skill sets, etc. And then which takes times to acquire the skill sets, and there's a lot of autonomy, etc. So in such kind of organizations, you will have broadly less number of grades. So typically, if you look at maybe how an organization is established, typically when an organization starts up, right, in its nascent phase, these jobs are not very clearly defined. People kind of end up doing multiple things, a lot of ambiguity, a lot of empowerment, etc. In such organizations, you generally see less number of grades from the highest to the lowest. But as and when these companies do progress on their business life cycle, from nascent to grow to mature, then these jobs start getting more specialized, more defined. That's when more number of grade structure comes. The progression from one grade to the other is generally narrow design, and then more number of grades do come. And maybe just to add on the kind of market context that we see today in today's organizations, with a lot of job definitions being impacted with multiple factors, including automation or including the advent of artificial intelligence. A lot of jobs are also that way becoming complex. A lot of multiple skill sets are being merged into one job, which basically is making organizations also more delayered and kind of reducing their job structures as well. So these are some of the perspectives that we see in the market.